So here we are with a bit of a global economic reset update. Now, there's been a lot of things going on recently. First thing I want to talk about is the war situation. It's become rather obvious that the elites have decided that there are two alternatives that they want to pursue to the global economic reset. One of those is creating a large enough war that the economies of the world would be forced into a reset, as indeed happened in World War One and World War Two. And the second prong of approach is to use the climate. And there is currently a meeting going on in Paris, which we all know about, where they are attempting to come to an agreement with some 200 countries on action and imposing some sort of a global climate police, which is just the first step in true globalization. Some people think globalization is a bad idea. I think it's actually a reasonably good one, but it rather depends how it's done. If it's done by an enforcement method, such as you either do this or we're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks, I don't think that's a good idea. Now, the global economic collapse itself seems to be gathering pace a little bit. It's going to gather even more pace very shortly because China is now a part of the SDR, which is the World Bank's currency. And basically this means that the renminbi will shortly be a standard international trade currency. It will be one of the world reserve currencies alongside the dollar and alongside the UK pound. Why is this of concern? It's of concern because the renminbi, because of China's industrial base and military might, is probably going to be a far, far stronger currency than the dollar. So it's going to attract a lot of outside investment. And Chinese have opened up their stock markets recently, and they've instituted an international payment system along with Russia, which is an alternative to the SWIFT system. And this is going to suck a lot of money out of American and Western finance in general, because obviously the Chinese system is a good alternative, and the Americans actually have a history of shutting off finance to the countries which they don't like by simply closing the SWIFT system to them. This is one of the sanctions, if you remember, that they imposed on Russia. And it's prompted this, and the new banking system is doubtless going to make China and Russia an awful lot of money at the expense of the US and the UK and the Germans, and that is quite interesting. Now, as regards the world's major economies, the US economy is now rather obviously tanking. The figures for the so-called Black Friday sales, which show consumer confidence, show no consumer confidence. The vast amount of consumer spending this year has been on cars, and this is because of the near zero loan rates on cars and the extended terms. There has been comments made that analysis of the type of people who've been buying cars has confirmed that these people shouldn't be granted loans and wouldn't be under normal circumstances. However, the Americans need to try and stimulate the economy, so loan granted. If you've got a pulse, you can get an American car loan. So What is all this going to do? All this is going to put a huge amount of pressure on the dollar. There'll be a huge amount of pressure on the Fed not to raise rates in December. However, a lot of the pundits think that the Fed has no choice. The Fed will have to raise rates. And if they do raise rates, it's only going to be by a tiny amount, maybe 0.1%. But that will still doubtless, in this current situation, have a large impact on both the US national debt repayment schedule, not that they seem to be repaying much of it, and the world in general, the financial world in general. And it's going to be possibly a negative impact. It may initially be positive because a lot of people do want the Fed to raise rates as a sign that the American economy is indeed reviving itself. However, as we know, in fact, it's really not reviving itself, with the number of people without jobs soaring and the contraction of manufacturing to near zero, apart from obviously in the military industrial sector, where because of wars, because of weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, they're actually doing reasonably. And weapons sale to Saudi Arabia is another thing, because there's a lot of things about Saudi Arabia. They're not a very nice country in effect, although they are in fact official allies of the US. They shouldn't really be selling weapons to them. Neither should they be giving weapons to ISIS, which is what they have been doing. So, China's economy is doing reasonably well, as may be expected. Chinese bonds, on the other hand, aren't doing so well, and this is possibly deliberate, because the Chinese need to keep, at least for the moment, the price of the renminbi low, so that their products are still ultra competitive on the world markets, and they still have a vast inflow of foreign currency, gold, and other trade goods. And this could well be part of a deliberate strategy on the part of the Chinese government. Now, Japan are in real trouble. One of the first things that goes wrong when a country does a hell of a lot of quantitative easing is that pensions suffer. And in Japan at the moment, there are huge, huge holes in their pensions budgets. Any country that does quantitative easing and has a large pension scheme for its government employees, especially one that's based on final salaries, is going to have massive problems. And this is what Japan have just found out. My apologies if you can hear the beeping. I forgot to put my phone on silence. That is someone that I don't want to talk to who's trying to sell me something, so I just left it. So that's kind of Japan and the Far East. And Europe here, well, the UK at the moment is trickling along. Our Black Friday sales weren't very good either, I have to say. And I think a lot of that, the national mood here, is due to the uncertainties surrounding possible war. There's recently been an announcement that the government is worried about ISIS having ballistic missiles. Not that the ballistic missiles could reach them from Syria, but ISIS do own an awful lot of freighters, and it wouldn't take much to outfit one with a couple of ballistic missiles and drop them on the City of London and ruin England's financial centre. And this is really what the government is worried about. So the rumour is we have SAS at the moment, Special Forces, out on the streets of London, and the police are on a very high state of alertness Certainly at the moment, where I live in Enfield, North London, just recently the town centre was shut down because somebody left a briefcase unattended outside a coffee bar. And the police arrested the person because they had the suspicion that he was actually testing police response times in preparation for a possible terrorist attack. So yeah, worrying times for the UK. And hence spending over Christmas is liable to be very low because people are worried about what's going to happen, and they're trying to keep their money. So in Germany, obviously terrorism on high alert. They've got a huge immigrant problem. Merkel is spending money like there is no tomorrow, trying to keep these immigrants fed, housed. She's given them all sorts of incentives to come into the country. Now, whether this is some sort of strategy to try and prevent ISIS attacks by having a large Muslim base in the country, or what it is, I don't know. But it certainly seems to be a deliberate strategy by the German government at the moment to try and attract immigrants. And this is now causing problems with the German people, and there's mini riots sparking up all over the country as people are finding their towns invaded by foreigners, which is a thing that Germans, unlike us English, are very unused to. This has been the case in England for quite a long time, that we've been accepting everyone as refugees, really, and without checking into them. And normally, in times of war, people would be interned. So if we were at war with ISIS, you would expect to see maybe all Syrians and Iraqis in internment camps, as happened to Japanese and Italians and some French in World War II. But no, none of that is actually happening, although the US does seem to have some internment camps prepared. Here in the UK, so far, there's no real sign of that. So, are we at war or aren't we? Who knows? Certainly there's no official declaration. And this uncertainty is no doubt one of the things that's affecting the economy, because not just the private citizens are concerned, but the businessmen are concerned also. So at this moment, certainly the economy seems to be going to hell in a handbasket in lots of different countries across the world. And for me, the major concern is Europe, and that is not because I live in Europe, although I wish I didn't. I wish it was still Britain, but never mind. But because the economy in Europe, the derivatives exposure by the German central bank is absolutely massive. And unlike the United States, they don't seem to have the resources to defend it very well. So I would be worried in the next year of banking collapses in Europe. Don't forget, we've already seen some in the last little recession. Northern Rock, for example, a lot of people lost their money. Yeah, it wasn't very pleasant for many people, and I can see there's going to be more bank collapses, possibly some government defaults on various obligations, perhaps including benefits and pensions. This is going to cause civil unrest. Civil unrest has already started in many countries in Europe due to the immigration situation and due to the fact that people don't really want their countries to go to war, as America is pushing the world towards the brink. Well, I hope you have actually enjoyed this video. And if you have, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.